Hi everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today is Friday, September 24th. I'm Sean Duhamel. Happy fall, everybody. It's hard to believe we've gone through another season. It's fall. It has been beautiful here in Boston and in New England for really the last couple of weeks. If you are still up in the New England area, if you haven't turned into a snowbird and gone south just yet, I hope you're enjoying this weather as much as I am. Fall is my personal favorite time of the year. And if you are in other parts of the country, because all of you, of course, are originally from here, or at least you lived here for some period of time and you worked up here, you know just what you're missing. And despite the green leaves behind me, we have some trees, particularly up north, that are starting to change over, and it's been simply stunning. Now, before I get into the thick of things this week, I want to wish my dad, Hank Duhamel, a happy birthday. His birthday is Saturday, and I know, Dad, you tune in from time to time and watch my weekly updates, and I always appreciate that. Thank you so much, but I just want to wish you a special happy birthday and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Now, I've got some great news to report. We're starting to see a lot of activity happen here on Beacon Hill just over the past couple of weeks. The legislative process is really starting to heat up. All of the various committees are having hearings, multiple hearings a week. But before I get into the status of some of our bills, let me report the absolutely first breaking news I have for you. Just yesterday, the House of Representatives unanimously overrode Governor Baker's veto of our legislation that increases the allowable hours that a public retiree is allowed to return to a public service job here in Massachusetts. Now, if you've been following this, or if you're impacted by this issue, you know this is something that we've been working on for quite a number of years now. A few years ago, the governor vetoed the exact same language. Unfortunately, that veto came at the end of the formal legislative session for the year. So we didn't have the opportunity back then, 3 years ago, to override that veto. The clock had run out on us. This time around, very different situation. The legislature remains in full formal session all the way through next July. So time has been on our side, and I'm very happy to report, and I want to thank the members of the House, both Democrats and Republicans, for A, bringing this issue up early in the fall, and B, for your unanimous support of public retirees and the respect that you have shown for those retirees who have chosen to continue giving of themselves and going back into the public sector on a part-time basis. What this legislation will do, quite simply, is increase the number of hours that a public retiree is allowed to work in a public job here in Massachusetts from the current 960 hours a year to the new level of 1,200 hours a year. It's a small increase. It means going from about 18 and a half hours a week to 23 hours a week. Now, this is still a very part-time process. We're not talking about full-time employment. There are other provisions for that where people are allowed to waive their pension or buy back into the retirement system if you go back to work full-time. This is simply for part-time workers. Now, the other piece of this that people quite frequently ask questions about is, what about the earnings restriction? Because it's really a two-part process. You're restricted on how many hours you can work, but also how much money you can make in the public sector as a public sector retiree. Now, right now, there are no changes taking place for the earnings side of things. And the reason for that is we just increased the earnings cap 8 years ago in 2014. So not even 8 years ago, 7 years ago, that change was made, and it increased the amount of money that a retiree can make by $15,000. Now, obviously, as time goes on and because of inflation, that's going to be something we're going to have to take a look at again somewhere down the road. But right now, since it's only been 7 years, there's not a willingness on behalf of the legislature, and you're seeing what we're going through with the governor right now in terms of him not being favorable with this whole issue. The ability for us to address both situations at the same time right now just doesn't exist. So we increased the money back in 2014. Now we're increasing the hours. So the override was unanimous in the House. 158 legislators voted in favor of overriding the veto, none in the negative. The issue is now before the state Senate, and we anticipate that the Senate will be taking up this issue in the near future. I also want to take a moment to thank our very close friends and allies at the Mass Police Association and the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts for their work on this issue for a very long time. We work hand in hand with Mass Police, with the firefighters, and with a number of other public sector unions on a whole bunch of different issues of mutual concern. But the police and the firefighters in particular have been very close allies of mass retirees, going all the way back to our founding in 1968, and particularly on this specific issue. And Jimmy Machado, the executive director of the Mass Police Association, who's a police sergeant in the town of Fall, or city of Fall River, I should say, has been working hand in hand with myself and Frank Valeri and the rest of our team here for a number of years on these issues and others of mutual concern. And Jimmy is also one of the PERAC commissioners and knows our public pension policy inside and out. So I want to give credit where it's due and thank those individuals for the work that they have put into this, because, like is the case with many things, we cannot do this alone, and we don't do this alone. Now, in addition to the veto override this week, we're also seeing a lot of activity by the Joint Committee on Public Service. Public Service is the Massachusetts Legislative Committee where virtually all public retirement legislation and ultimately public retirement laws originate. State Senator Mike Brady from Brockton and State Representative Ken Gordon from the town of Bedford are the co-chairmen of the Public Service Committee. This past week, Public Service heard a variety of bills related to disability retirement. One of those bills was our association's proposal relative to ordinary disabilities. Now, we have come across what we believe to be a problem with the current ordinary disability law. It's really not serving the purpose that it's intended to serve, and at the very least, we believe that the ordinary disability benefit should be equal to what is available under the Social Security disability system, where if somebody in the private sector gets hurt or gets sick with a non-job related cause, that there is a benefit under Social Security disability to take care of that person and help that person and help their family. And we want to make sure that there's an equivalent benefit on the public sector side. And that was always the intention, but because of inflation and a variety of other things, that benefit has kind of fallen by the wayside in recent years. And we have filed legislation, again, to try to bring some attention to that and modernize that benefit. Now, for the coming week, there is a public service hearing taking place this coming Tuesday. We have 4 or 5 bills that we have filed on the hearing docket that day. Every bill that's filed in Massachusetts has to have a public hearing. That's a provision under the state constitution. So on Tuesday, myself and Nancy McGovern, who's our legislative liaison, and Frank Valeri, will be taking part in the virtual public hearing. Remember, the State House is still closed because of the pandemic. All of the legislative activity, by and large, particularly the hearings, all of that is taking place remotely through Zoom and through other meeting applications. So we will be providing verbal testimony virtually, as well as submitting written testimony. And the 2 key bills up for us this coming week are relative to veterans benefits. And these are very important bills to us. We've been working on these now for the last few years. One modernizes the definition of veteran as it applies to retirement benefits, and expands the definition to make sure that those veterans who served during peacetime, as well as certain National Guard or reservists who are called up to active duty under certain circumstances, that they are also considered to be veterans for retirement purposes. Because remember, there is a federal definition of what a veteran is under the Defense Department and through the VA. But you also have a Massachusetts definition as it applies to benefits here in Massachusetts that are afforded to veterans, as well as for retirement benefits. Now, in addition, we also have a companion bill to this that would increase the veterans bonus that's paid to retirees here in Massachusetts. Right now, there's a veterans bonus that maxes out at $300 a year. It's automatically included as part of your pension if you're a veteran. This benefit dates back to 1957. And while it's fantastic that we're giving an extra benefit to our veterans who very much deserve and earned this, we haven't increased the benefit since 1957. So it's been locked in at that $300 level now the better part of the last 60 years, give or take, if my math is correct, and is long overdue that this be addressed. And State Representative Jerry Paracella, State Senator John Velas, both of whom are veterans themselves, are working with us on these issues. We very much appreciate their support. So those bills will be heard this coming week. Earlier this year, 6 additional mass retirees bills already received a public hearing. The two or three key bills amongst that group: the basic life insurance benefit for state retirees, the COLA base increase for state and teacher retirees, and the creation of a new senior or enhanced COLA benefit that would be paid to long-term retirees. Those are the bills that were heard earlier this year. We're very hopeful that Public Service will choose to favorably release that group of bills in the near future, send it to the House or Senate Ways and Means committees, because it's very important that we have the ability to work with those two committees as they craft the FY23 budget later this fall, with the hope of us being able to include some of those provisions in the upcoming budget. But with that, I'm going to log off for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have a full report back to you next week. Hopefully we'll have some news with Senate activity and further public service activity. But thank you so much for your support, and we'll talk to you again really soon.